maybe you can talk a little bit about the myths. As our startup community grows, you start to hear things like, there's no capital here, it's hard to raise money here.
Yeah, so there's a whole section in the book about classical problems and myths, and let me highlight two of them I think that are important ones. One that you mentioned, which is that there's not enough capital here, and especially the myth that there's not enough venture capital here. It turns out that there's never enough capital. It turns out that it's always hard to raise money. Even when it looks easy, it's still not easy. And it might be easy at one moment in time for one entrepreneur, but it's never fundamentally easy. And so the idea that that's a constraint for you as an entrepreneur is an artificial constraint that you're creating. And it's actually not something that you can do that much about directly. In other words, if you're an entrepreneur, whining about there not being enough capital doesn't get you more capital. And, oh, by the way, there's not much that you can structurally do in the short term to get more capital, other than create compelling companies that then attracts capital. So there's a lot of different things that happen over the evolution of a startup community in terms of capital. And one of the dynamics is, if you have, over a long period of time, an engaged startup community, you tend to get a lot more early stage capital into the community, because much of that early stage capital doesn't come from venture capitalists, it comes from other entrepreneurs. And so it comes from other entrepreneurs who have made some money and turn around and reinvest it back into other local startups, because that's fun, it's interesting, and it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs like to do. You also get to the place, if you think about capital today, you've got a bunch of seed funds in LA, and a lot of early stage investors in LA. In 2007, there were no seed investors. I mean, like, the whole idea of a seed investor existing was like a unicorn. And you had some angel investors, but you really didn't have very many seed investors. Today, there's a whole category. You know, there's too much seed investing, and now everybody's saying there's too many things being invested. It's just never in balance. So just don't give a shit about it. It's not something you can control. That's one myth. One of the classic problems that exists, and I'll describe it with a story, is something I talk about in the book called the patriarch problem. The patriarch problem, when I'm really grumpy, I call it the old white guy problem. And here's how it works. I went to Colorado Springs, which is about 2 hours south of Boulder. A friend of mine that I know picks me up and drives me to one of the nicest houses in Colorado Springs, overlooking the whole town. And we have this beautiful dinner at this guy's house. Beautiful house. And, you know, I'm having dinner, and basically it's with about 20 people. Somebody senior in government, I can't remember what their role is, the chancellor of the university, the president of the university, the local school, somebody from the mayor's office that's like the chief of staff, and then like 15 old white guys. All right, that's whatever. And there are, 2 or 3 entrepreneurs, and the rest were, the old white guy. And we have a nice dinner. We talk about, entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial community in Colorado Springs, and I hear about how there aren't enough good entrepreneurs, and the venture capitalists aren't here, and these guys want to invest money in things, but they have to go somewhere else to invest money because there's just not enough talent here in Colorado Springs, and da-da-da-da-da, and what should we do to solve for that? Next day I do a bunch of meetings. I talk at the angel meeting, 300 people show up, how many people here have made an investment in the last 12 months, like 4 hands go up. What the fuck are you doing here? This is angel group meeting, like 4 people made angel investments. Like, really? And, I challenge them to, like, go do some stuff. Like, stop with we're something we're not. I do some stuff at the university. I had some lunch with some entrepreneurs, do some more stuff. And at the end of the day, I show up in Old Town, Colorado Springs, in an art museum, an art gallery with about 30 people. And we had this incredible conversation. The stuff that they were doing was just awesome. We were talking, and I described my dinner the night before, and you could just see everybody, like the energy go out of the room. And somebody said, they knew about the people the night before. How do we get those people to pay attention to us? And I said, you don't, just ignore them. Just ignore them. A couple of things are going to happen. Number one, some of them are really cool and really awesome. And if you're doing cool stuff, they will notice you're doing cool stuff, and they will show up. because they want to do cool stuff with interesting people. So they'll notice something's going on and they'll just come to you. And then a couple of their friends will come hang out with them because that's where they're hanging out with, and they'll end up hanging out with you. And some of the rest of them won't do anything. But you know what? Those people are going to die anyway. What's the matter? You're not living. So don't worry about the patriarchs. They don't control what's going on here. And instead, just do what the internet does. Just route around them. And go create your own future. You're not waiting for somebody else to tell you it's okay.
There's the saying, JFDI.
That?
JFDI.
Just fucking do it.
I have a question, if that's okay, for Brad. So, Brad, you talk about the patriarch problem, or the old white guy problem, but specifically as it relates to venture capitalists. We've got Hollywood here in our backyard. How is Hollywood going to evolve, do you think?
You know, I don't know. I've never been a Hollywood insider, so my view of Hollywood is mostly through the movies they produce to try to brainwash me into understanding how Hollywood works. Like my view of Hollywood is like from the Players or something. What I do think is true from the outside looking in is, as an entrepreneur, you want to limit your dependency on any agency. So as an investor, there's a simple phenomenon called the agency problem that we try to, at Foundry Group, avoid investing in. The agency problem is where you have somebody between you and your customer, and you have to go through them to get to your customer. And Hollywood creates an agency problem. And so the issue is, as an entrepreneur, you want to minimize the amount of agency between you and your end customer, but you also have to realize that there's a lot of institutional norms that you have to deal with depending on where you're at. So you have to choose whether you're trying to disrupt the agency problem or minimize it. If you ask me to predict what it would look like in 20 years, I have absolutely no idea. And I'm not sure it matters that much, because if you're building your company today and you decide, I'm going to disrupt it, okay, you know, there's this giant thing and you're trying to figure out how to create a business that gets around it or changes the way it works. Or I'm trying to minimize it, in which case you have to really study how you get to your customer and how you get money from your customer and how little you have to interact with these people to get there.
Hey Brad, thanks for coming. And when does Hollywood become like a detriment to the community? And the second part is when you have these famous actors and things like that who put their names on it for essentially a return, but then at the same time, become that advisor where they want a percent, like you were saying, or a $5,000 retainer versus becoming a mentor. Like, how do you segregate between the two?
So in the first, which is how do you deal with the, I don't know what the right categorization of the problem is generically, but let's call it the poser or pretender problem, where somebody gets excited about being an entrepreneur because it's hip, trendy, and cool, and there's all of a sudden a rush of those into the system. People that really aren't committed to building a business or committed to going on a long-term journey. Time solves that. And that's why you have to think about it with a 20-year plus lens, is that none of those people are able to sustain their pretend activity for very long. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3, but the vast majority of that goes away. And it happens very quickly, and it happens often very quietly because of the ego dynamics of the people involved. So it's one of these things where, you kind of all of a sudden notice it, and then you all of a sudden notice it went away if you're a serious entrepreneur and you power through. And as a startup community, it's just noise and histrionics, and frankly, it's kind of entertaining, and sometimes it's a little amusing, to be adjacent to it, but don't get wrapped up in it. That's part one. Part two is ask the second part of your question again, because I was going to say something else, but then I realized it wasn't the question. I'll make sure I get the second part of the question.
So one thing I've noticed is that when I first came up with the startup.
Oh, the advisor. So I'm a movie star, and I'm going to invest in your company, but I also want a little extra big because I'm a movie star, and if I lend my name to your company, then I should get
It's
an
not
extra.
really invest in the company because a lot of people that, you know, they don't even put any money.
Yeah, you can say I'm associated with your company if you give me some blah, blah, blah. So thing number one as an entrepreneur, resist temptation. Like, ask yourself the question, am I going to get anything useful out of this? And if the answer is probably not, then don't. So, I mean, some of it is just the entrepreneurs getting sucked into that dynamic. Now, there's a lot of people, I like to say that if you're hiring VP of sales, that's the hardest role to hire a lot of times because people who are VPs of sales are often very good at selling themselves, even if they suck at selling, right? They're good at selling the best product. As an entrepreneur, as a CEO of a company, as a leader of a new startup, don't get blinded by somebody that's got some fame or some flash or that, you know, talks about how they can help you with something. Check it out. Make sure that they've done it before. Ask them for an introduction to the 5 other people that they've done work with before and ask those people if it's actually useful. Same thing with a venture capitalist. I'm a great investor. I'm going to be a value-added venture capitalist. The second somebody says something like that, you know they're full of shit. Like, why do you have to describe what you're doing with action? I'm going to be value-added. If you have to tell me that, just show me that. Don't tell me that. And so it's the same kind of thing. Get into a mode where people are showing you what they're going to be doing for you rather than telling you what they're going to be doing. And be skeptical. It's very easy as an entrepreneur to be optimistic about everything. And just make sure you have a skeptical filter that applies to anybody that asks you for something before they do something for you.